Welcome to my leadership series. I'm negotiation and leadership strategist Elizabeth Suarez. My goal is to help you enhance your skills to establish a more profitable, inclusive, and productive workplace. Throughout this series, I will be talking to industry leaders and delving into their managerial styles.
In today's video, I am spotlighting Daniella Kahane. She is the Executive Director, CEO of WIN, which stands for Women in Negotiation, which is a female-focused negotiation skills training company. Daniella, welcome, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I would like to start to getting the audience to know a little bit more about yourself from a personal perspective. Like, where were you born and raised, and where did you go to college, and what did you study?
I am a New Yorker through and through. I was born in New York. I was raised, in kind of the outskirts of New York City. I went to school in New York. I went to Barnard College, which I credit with really kind of unleashing my inner feminist. Way before it was sort of like normal conversation. And I studied English literature, as well as film and psychology.
Fascinating. I mean, I also lived in New York City for several years. A piece of my heart is in New York. I love New York and also went to college in New York, but I did all the opposite of you. I envy you. I did the engineering route. So boring. Yours must have been a fun learning experience.
When I was an English major, it took me a while to land on my major, and the negative talk was like, oh, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to be a professor? Because there's nothing more you can really do with that. And I think it's so false. Like, English majors are amazing because it gives you so many foundational skills in terms of writing and communication and analytical work. And I mean, I think it really opens up like just a whole world. So I definitely loved my time at Barnard, and that I had that degree.
So now I'm curious to see how an English major will define leadership. How do you define that?
Good question. I think my definition of leadership is constantly evolving. I don't know that I can kind of pin it in the sand, as a fixed thing. But I would say that like the core things that are probably consistent to me about leadership is the power that we have inside ourselves to inspire, to uplift, and to engender growth in the people around us. There's an amazing quote that I love, and it just resonated with me when I heard it, from the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who was the great spiritual leader, the chief rabbi in England. And he says, good leaders create followers. Great leaders create leaders. And I think it's so wise and so true, and it's something that I certainly aspire to as a leader.
Wow, I love that. It's so strong, that creating leaders. So with that concept, what are the core principles that guide you as a leader?
Okay, so a few things. Humility. The idea that it's okay not to know. As a leader, we don't need to know all the answers, or have all the answers at our disposal all the time. Vulnerability. It's okay to make mistakes and to admit when things are hard. And I think this is something that a lot of leaders have a hard time with. Passion, right? If you want other people to care, you need to start by caring. The idea of kind of living the values that you hope to engender in others. Number 4, perseverance. There's no substitute for hard work. And number 5, faith. The idea that we don't always know the way forward, but there is a way forward. And fundamentally, I kind of believe that things will work out.
I really like your 5 cores, because I think that's what is helping us be able to, I will admit it, survive what we have been living since March 2020. This has not been fun. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've gotten to my boiling point. I mean, as an engineer, I was taught very much about what happens in boiling points, and I'm there. I can tell you that. So
I think we all are. I think the whole year has been a boiling point, a constant boiling point. And, I think just as you think, you're kind of turning down the simmer, it kind of goes back up, and our ability to be in that and persist through that is really kind of the leader in each of us.
And we bring up an excellent point, and it started on May 25th, 2020, with unfortunately the death of George Floyd. And we are filming this in April 2021. And, the verdict has come back concerning that awful death. And a lot of, yes, hope, but at the same time, a lot of like tears and that heartfelt about what do we do. And it has become that today the mandate is all about inclusive leadership within organizations. It's not only society. Now organizations are being asked to, you better step up. So what's your opinion on the subject of inclusion in the workplace, especially with everything that we are living in this country, and not only in this country, in the world?
Yeah, I think it's fundamental. I think inclusion is it's something that everybody needs to be embracing, both in terms of people in the workplace, but in terms of yourself too. I think one thing that we realized, this year, especially through this kind of seismic shift beneath us, is the need to be able to show up in our totality, as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to kind of show you this small side of me, right? There's this obviously bleeding of all these different, kind of aspects of work and home and life. And I think part of what has made this year so profound is that it has brought to the surface this dire need for change, for it has kind of brought the disease up into the light of day. And so I think, it's exciting that companies now are finally realizing the importance of diversity and inclusion. And I say inclusion too, I think, you used inclusion as opposed to diversity, and it's so important. There's a quote that I love from Verna Myers, who says, diversity is like being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. Right. And I love that, because I think it has to go right beyond the who's in the room. And the statistics are such that everybody wins when we are leaning into our inclusion in the workplace, in the picture. Companies perform better. There's greater talent retention, better workplace culture, and just healthier societies. So I think, it's an absolute fundamental.
I love that quote concerning inclusion is to be asked to dance, after you were already invited to the party. So let's be honest, Daniella, what is the biggest challenge leaders face, leaders like yourself and leaders that you work with face, making sure that everybody in their organization is being asked to dance?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's like it's a full-time job in itself, right? If you think about how leaders are bringing in DEI specialists, obviously it's not an option anymore. It's a requirement, which is great, because when you are leading, obviously there's so much to keep your finger on the pulse of that's a whole nother sphere. But I think that it has to stem from culture. And if you are creating a culture where people feel safe being themselves, and people also feel valued in terms of the work they're doing, then it becomes a lot easier. I don't think you're fighting necessarily upstream as much. And so I think it kind of starts with culture and the way, and getting back to those core principles that you asked me about as a leader, the way you are emanating and infusing your company with those values.
And that's a great point. And I know, especially that you're in New York City, a lot of the work has gone virtual since the pandemic began, and you're all still virtual, it seems. And maybe you'll go back more to more in person, maybe in the summer or in the fall. But what were some of the actions other than going virtual? And now that you're living virtually, what are some of the actions that leaders like you, or even the leaders you work with, put into place during this pandemic in order to keep everybody whole? I mean, what are some of the actions you all have taken?
Okay, so it brings me back, obviously, to March 2020, when we were evaluating every single day. Okay, what do? We have a in-person summit scheduled for May, mid-May. Do we pull the trigger on it? Do we push it? Do we cancel it? And at the time, nobody thought in a million years that this was going to persist as long as it did, obviously. And we're in the mindset of, okay, it'll be a few weeks and we'll ride the wave and we'll get on with life as normal. And I think it's so crazy to think back. I mean, it was only a year ago, obviously, a little more than a year ago, on how false our perceptions were, right? Obviously, as a in-person event company, when we realized that this wasn't going away so quickly, we were forced with a very stark decision of, do we freeze like a lot of in-person event companies did and say we are not doing anything until life resumes? Or do we say we're going to make the best of it? We're going to lean into what we can. And I remember the day, it was about 3 weeks before the date of the summit, the in-person summit, which was May 13th, or at least it was supposed to be, that I said to my team, I need to do something. We need to do something. We need to find a way to show up for our community right now. And it's not going to look like it was supposed to, but it's going to be something. And so in 3 weeks' time, we had already pushed the WIN Summit, the official WIN Summit, out. But in 3 weeks' time, we planned a virtual summit that was free and open to the public with an optional fundraiser aspect to raise money for PPE for healthcare professionals and first-line responders. And it was honestly as much about our own need to feel that we were doing something a little bit less helpless and a very, very hard, depressing, it doesn't begin to cover it, time, as well as obviously the desire to show up for our community. And the event was amazing. And it was just kind of profoundly impactful in terms of how it felt like we were able to connect people in a time of obviously great isolation. And so I think for me, it was kind of demonstrative of the fact that there's always a choice, right? Like we were one of the industries that was hit hardest in the sense that we were in-person events, like, and we didn't even qualify for the government sustenance, programs. Strangely, they had a weird carve out for in-person events. But yet we chose to say, we're going to embrace the tools that we have at our disposal. And we shifted everything online and we pushed on, and I'm so glad we did. And I will say it was hard. Like, it wasn't an easy thing at all. And on a personal note, there were times in this past summer when I was pregnant with my third child, enduring a high-risk pregnancy, high risk, without even COVID in the picture, obviously heightened anxiety because of COVID, having both kids home without any structure, with very little support, and feeling like the business was not going where I wanted it to. We had just launched workshops and coaching as additional products right before COVID hit, and whatever interest was there in the pipeline kind of vanished, right, with COVID. And I was just so exhausted to the bone and sick. I wasn't walking, I was throwing up every day. I had a lot of high risk issues in my pregnancy. And I really wanted to just say, I'm done. Like, I can't handle this. This is obviously not working. And it was only because of my community and the coaches that, we have on our team, and just the incredible WIN community, that I said, okay, I'm going to continue. And so, I don't know, I think it's a long response, but the idea being that it wasn't always easy, but I'm so glad that I pushed on, because it has picked up since. I got through my pregnancy. I have a beautiful baby girl. And we get a lot of validation for the work we do. So we know that it's needed.
Wow. That's inspirational. I did not know the story. I did not know that you had a high risk pregnancy right through the pandemic. I cannot even imagine. But I mean, this is inspirational how you just charge forward. And I mean, like what you said, I love your message. You had a tribe. You had that network, that circle of yours, however we want to call it, that really inspired you and helped you move forward. So, congratulations, you inspired me. So I'm not going to talk
You.
about my boiling point anymore. You were like beyond boiling point last summer.
Okay. Like, I think we have to validate our own boiling
Mhm.
points and then make the choice that's going to be
Yes.
the healthy choice, and I think only through acknowledging the boiling points can we get there.
Excellent point. So now I want to shift it before we conclude to the future, because at least I'm in the state of Colorado in the United States of America, and we have a lot of hope
Okay.
here because our government has really focused on vaccination, and over half of the population is vaccinated, fully vaccinated. I'm one of those people. So, but I'm still following all the CDC guidelines. So we're hoping that the second part of this year could be a little bit more towards what we are accustomed doing. So with that, what are some key opportunities you're looking at for that moment when the majority of us can say, okay, let's breathe now. Let's go ahead and start all over again. But knowing that it's not going to be going back to February 2020.
Right.
What are some opportunities that lay ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than ever, there's going to be a desire to reconvene in person. And so in whatever way we can do that safely and healthfully, I think we will. And so I do hope that, our next summit will be a hybrid model of some sort. I think in general, right, that need to reconnect. We've been so deprived of social connection, of touch. And I think that need, like through trauma, we bond. And we have all had, to varying degrees, a traumatic year. And so I think that we already universally feel more bonded to each other. And I really believe that this is kind of the earthquake that needed to happen for us to heal as a country, because we need to heal. And we see an awakening towards racial justice. We see an awakening towards gender equality and and equity. We see an awakening towards mental health awareness, and so many issues that have been so long been pushed under the rug, so to speak. And so I think that we're moving towards leading and living, etc., with just much more nuance, which is exciting.
That is correct. So before I conclude, I would like to ask you one more question. And this question is based on all the experience you've had and everything. What is one key piece of advice you would offer your younger self? Think about going back to when you were graduating from Barnard and you had your first job. What is that key piece of advice you will want to give your younger self?
Patience. I think.
Why? That's a good one, but why?
I think I, was that graduate who left expecting everything to happen immediately. I wanted, to win awards for my films immediately. And I wanted to get married immediately. And I wanted to start a family immediately. And I just wanted everything all at once. And I didn't get it all at once. And it's impossible to get everything all at once, or even at all. But I think to give my younger self that message of learn to live with more patience and trust that when you need them, the things will come in the right order. And so that is, I would have saved myself a lot of angst and agitas.
And you know what? I think it's a great advice that we all need to give each other, especially now living through the pandemic. We're going to have to be patient with ourselves, patient with each others, and even patient with our leaders, because I know a lot of us, even if it's political leaders or business leaders, we're looking at everybody and criticizing. We need patience, because what we have gone through as a community, as a country, and individually is something that really doesn't happen that many times. Wasn't it over 100 years ago when this happened? And it's something that we need patience. So, Daniela, I really appreciate you spending the time with me and sharing your thoughts and ideas about leadership. And I'm leaving very inspired, to tell you the truth. So, thank you, all of you that are watching, and I will welcome your feedback on this topic. So, comment below so we can continue the conversation. See you next time. Nos vemos.